Let's get our Phillies mailbag. Frank Klose is here, and he's got the mailbag questions open. Let's get right into them, Frank. Here on the Sports Bash, Theo wants to know, knowing what you now know, would you trade Ken Giles? Would you do that trade again with the same return, which was Uberholzer, Velasquez, Appel, Eshelman, and Harold Araz? You probably know him better than me. And there you go. Would you do that deal again?
I actually would. I think Phillies fans are pretty frustrated with the closing situation with the Phillies. Hector Neris really hasn't taken hold of the closer's role like they thought he might and like fans had high hopes for earlier in the season, as they went through the Jean-Mar Gomez and the Joaquin Benoit closer cycle before. But I still think that that's a deal the Phillies should have done. And I think it still may very well work out for them. Now, when you consider that Giles, if you think about it, he's going to be a free agent in a few years. Phillies aren't really going to be ready to win until the end of that. So sort of using all of that talent at the present wouldn't necessarily help the Phillies long term, if that makes sense. So now Oberholzer, he kind of came in as a one and done type player, eat some innings for the year. Go about your way. I think Mark Appel, I kind of think he's not going to make it with the Phillies. We were talking a few weeks ago, he had that great start, but he went right back to the inconsistent Mark Appel, where his last start he lasted just 2 outs. So I think he might be somebody that isn't going to make the 40, isn't going to stay on this Phillies 40-man roster for much longer, unfortunately. Now I hope he does figure out he's got a lot of talent, but he's just inconsistent. But when you consider Velasquez, you guys had Kevin Cooney talking about him yesterday. He kind of sees him still having a lot of upside as a reliever. I personally would agree with that and say that maybe he could be a reliever, a lockdown closer. When the trade happened, a lot of scouts thought that Velasquez would be as good a closer as Giles was at that moment. And you still have Tom Eshelman to look forward to. Now, he is not currently on the Phillies' top 30 prospects on the MLB pipeline, but you can't argue with his results. He's 7-2 down at AAA with an ERA in the high 1.9. So you have some pieces that could last you a while, even if you're kind of struggling with the closer's role right now. And let's face it, how many games do you need a closer at this moment?
So, Frank, of all those guys they got back in that deal, who do you think will be the best at Major League player?
That's a good question. I still think Velasquez will be. I think I tend to, as I said, I think he should be a closer. And I think if he gets into that role and he can kind of let his arm go loose, not worrying about pitching 6 innings while, it's almost like he tries to pitch a 7-inning ball game in the first inning, where he's got that in his head that he's got to go deep in the game now, which we all have talked about repeatedly, and that just seems to hamper him. So I think the second half is important for Velasquez to see what he can do going forward. If he can be a closer, he's got a starter, he's got a great arm, but if he's going to be a closer, he certainly seems to profile that role.
Mailbag's open. Frank Klose is with us. So Tim wants to know, Frank, what player currently on the Phillies will make the most All-Star Game appearances as a Philly?
This is very interesting. I almost answered this question with Pat Neshek with his one, that he's going to have this year, tonight. But I think I would have to go with Aaron Nola for that answer. Now, there's some good players on the Phillies. The Cesar Hernandezes and Aaron Altairs. I see them as players that are going to be very, very good, but shy of that All-Star role. Jason Worth never made an All-Star team sans when Charlie Emanuel brought him as an injury replacement for Carlos Beltran back in 2010, if you may remember. But I think that Nola, we're really seeing him mature. I mean, he was already a mature pitcher when he came up, and I think we're really seeing just when his curveball was working, it's awesome. I think he's going to give the Phillies a lot of consistency to the point where next year he's probably going to stand out as that All-Star. And I wouldn't be shocked if he made more down the line, even as they added more players that are part of their future. So right now, with the roster on the field right now, I'm going to say Aaron Nola.
Frank Klose is with us. Frank, you wrote about Tommy Joseph earlier this week on the website, 973ESPN.com. You gave a couple destinations, trading partners for him. And some people would say, well, he's the best guy they got. Why are they trying to trade him? That's the game of baseball, especially when you're not a very good team. You got to give to get, and there's a logjam at that position.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I kind of wonder if the Phillies are going to be able to pull something off in the interim. The teams that are looking for a first baseman, like the Cardinals or the Yankees, they tend to be looking for a left-handed first baseman. And I think that the teams generally that if you're going to gear up, so you have two situations. The Cardinals need offense this year and next year, which makes Joseph a fit, but they really want a lefty, which if they find a lefty to play the outfield, they might be able to do. But the Yankees seem to want somebody that's going to help them win this year, which means, I think that you can do better for a stretch run type player and somebody like Yonder Alonso. So I don't necessarily see Tommy Joseph that great a fit with anybody, but where you might see him be a fit, Justin Bour, who was in last night's home run derby, he might be someone the Yankees want, but then what might happen then is the teams that trade the first baseman might be able to take Tommy Joseph off of your hands. Now, I say it that way not because the Phillies are in any situation where they have to unload him, but I think it would be beneficial to let Rhys Hoskins play, and you're not really helping the long-term future of Hoskins by sticking him at AAA. But this might be a situation where Hoskins has to even wait out the entire season, where a player like Joseph is more tradable in the offseason.
Frank, we opened up the show today by talking about how, watching the AllStar Game and the Home Run Derby, per se, is a little frustrating if you're a Phillies fan because there's so many guys 25 and younger making appearances in this game that if you're in the Philly system, you're probably not even up.
I think that criticism of the Phillies is a little unfair at times. A lot depends on where the player comes from, when they're drafted. Now, if you draft a high schooler, you can develop quicker. If you sign an international free agent that's younger, like Cesar Hernandez took a while to make the Phillies, but they signed him at 16 years old. But I don't think they're necessarily holding players down too much. I know Ryan Howard's situation, he was blocked by Tomey. I think they're calling for Hoskins. He's blocked by Tommy Joseph, as we just said. But a lot of their other prospects, they really haven't necessarily, made the statement with their play that they need to come up right now. So I don't think you really promote them until they've sort of earned it. Just because of their age being what it is, I don't think that necessarily means they have to come up or because other players are performing well. I think those types of players that we're seeing have higher ceilings than the prospects in the Philly system. It's just that the talent level is not necessarily what these all-stars are. And I think that's something which is a concern for the Phillies long term. Is I think they got a lot of nice pieces in the system. I don't see any perennial all-star in the system at the moment, but they may have to add that bat as a free agent.
He's Frank Klose. You can check him out at Frank Klose on Twitter. That's Klose with a K. And, of course, on Tuesdays, we got the Phillies Mailbag All-Star Edition, the All-Star Game tonight. And you can hear that game on 97.3 ESPN. Frank, of course, enjoy the rest of the day. Phillies are back in action when? Thursday?
I think,
Friday.
I'm trying to remember now. I think it's till Friday.
Yeah, Friday, I believe.
Yeah, we have a couple of days to relax after the All-Star Game.
Well, enjoy the time off.
Thank you.